Hello again, everyone. This is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting, and I have my good friend here, Jenny Utz from Utz Realty. And if you've listened to the past couple of episodes that she and I have done, we've gone through and we've talked about what it is to be an entrepreneur, what it is to be, and the part of the reason why Jenny and I are doing this is because it's kind of like a point, counterpoint, different points of view, different experiences, male versus female. Not that there should be, but sometimes different ways of looking at things. And she and I chose to talk about a topic today that both of us are fully aware of, but it's also one of those things I think that oftentimes is not talked about enough, and a topic that a lot of people tend to kind of like either gloss over and sometimes also kind of close up or maybe encapsulate their feelings, if you will, in the moment and put it on the shelf because they don't want to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
And what it really is about, as owners, entrepreneurs, business people, we all have stuff that goes on in our lives. And we think that, we end up kind of like we're put on this pedestal and, we're supposed to be different than everybody else. And in a way we should be. But at the same time, we are literally just like everyone else. And, I know, Shelly, my wife, not long ago, she lost her mom and she dealt with about a year worth of her mom having cancer and fighting cancer. She lost her grandmother. She's lost her dad. I've had stuff going on in my life, and we've all had stuff. And I think what Jenny and I were talking about is the fact that oftentimes we just don't have an outlet. We don't have, or we don't think we do. And maybe that's really what we're going to talk about today, is we don't think we actually have like a way to, I don't want to say fix it, but maybe deal with it. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. I think so just a little backstory. My grandmother is currently dealing with some things. We were notified that she had a stroke last Sunday. And for me, she is my mother figure, has been for 25 years. So it hit me pretty hard. When I visit her in the hospital, it came pretty clear that she wasn't going to recover from the stroke. She no longer recognizes me or anyone else. It was her birthday. She didn't even know it was her birthday. She doesn't have speech anymore. She is immobile. And so at this point, they have determined that she's not a candidate for rehab. And instead, we've now moved her to a nursing home with hospice care.
Hmm.
She's also not eating currently. So the time frame on her outlook will all depend on she is a little stubborn, so how stubborn she is. But I love that about her and just how her body reacts to everything. And so one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about is what it looks like and how you set up your business in order to then be there for your family or for your
Hmm.
why and for what's important to you. And for me, I did that really early on because I realized how important my family was to me. And that is the only reason I do what I do. And so by doing that, I realized once again early on the things that I needed to do and the things that I needed to put in place in order to last week, I sat by her side in the hospital, 8 a.m. when visiting hours open to 8 p.m. every day. And I didn't think twice about it because one, I knew that's where I needed to be. And two, because I knew that everything else was being taken care of, that the business was still running without me. I was still making money without being present. And that is because of everything that I've set up in place from the years prior. And one of those things that I kind of wanted to get into, what that looked like for me personally, was actually when I got into real estate actually when I was, I think, 22 years old. And shortly after that, I had had my son. And shortly after that, I was diagnosed with meningitis. And so I was completely bedridden, flat on the ground for about 6 weeks. I couldn't
Wow.
sit up at all because if I did, I would pass out. So it was just the pressure in my head and the fluids. And that was 6 weeks of not looking at my phone, not messaging anyone. And I quickly realized I can't sell real estate like this. I don't have any systems, any processes in place. And so after that experience, thank God it was early on in my career, and I already wasn't making a ton of money, so I didn't have a ton of expenses at that point. But it allowed me to figure out what I needed to do to be present for my kids, have anything unexpected happen to me or to them, and be able to still function. And some of those things have been, creating the tasks and different processes that I've put in place, hiring the right people to delegate the things that you shouldn't be doing, leaving just those high ticket items for me to do. And whether that also means hiring a VA to help with some of those tasks as well. A lot of those things I've been able to put in place, which has really helped through this process. And I mean, I'll say the past week, and now here we are into this next week, I'm still working, but I'm not putting my 100% into my work this week either. I'm her sole power of attorney, so all of the decisions of her care go through me. So of course I've got a ton of phone calls, a ton of hospice visits, wanting to spend time with my grandmother. And once again, I'm fortunate and lucky to be able to do that, to make sure that she is being taken care of the way that she wants to be. But also I'm fortunate to know that the business is still running and I don't need to be there in order for everything to still flow properly.
And there's two things you're not overtly saying that I hope that folks listening to this get out of this is, and I want to make sure I also got this right. So pregnant and meningitis at the same time,
I
or
had
close
just had my son,
or
and
just
then I
had him?
was, yeah, yep. So that somebody else had to take care of him for 6 weeks. And actually my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather, two of the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life, um, they were the ones who took care of me for 6 weeks. So I lived with them. They had my food there for me. I couldn't sit up that long, so they had to have it chopped up, ready to go, and then I would just go lay right back down. And they did this for 6 weeks, in and out, every meal, made sure that I could get, to where I needed to go. And so when family takes that much time and effort for you, you want to be able to give back and do that for them. And that's a no-brainer in my world.
Well, to me, the big part of the big lesson, and the reason I wanted to clarify that is, you had, I don't know, we'll say however you want to count it, two or three big whammies. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you had Ty, right?
Yep.
And you had uh I don't know, don't have personal experience with this, but my understanding is that when, a lady gets pregnant, then, life is not the same anymore. So
That's correct.
you had that, right?
Yes.
And life evolves, and I know it's a different experience for everybody. And then you have him, and of course, the first thing most moms say is that they don't actually, there's no sleep, you're up, maybe 2 hours of sleep if you get it in increments kind of thing. But instead of that experience with your first child, now it's like you're flat on your back with meningitis.
Yeah.
So, but the thing you kind of proceeded with all that was the fact that, you kind of took that and it's a learning experience. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you saw like we can't live like this forever. And I
Correct.
think all too often, a lot of people think in concept or in context of tomorrow, as opposed to next year, 5 years, 10 years kind of thing. Because if you kind of have the where's my next paycheck coming from, which in some respects you always do need to have an element of that, but
Right.
at the same time you need to be thinking way, way, way bigger than that.
Absolutely.
And that's a kind of, in a way, you have to structure your life and your business and your lifestyle to accommodate, in a sense, what has happened in the last week or two for you.
Right.
So because that just did not like overnight. I mean, I know it in a sense happened overnight, but the support system and the ability for you to do what you've done in the last 1 to 2 weeks did not just happen because you snapped your fingers.
Correct. It took a lot of planning. I mean, there was a lot of time. every system that I have, especially on the property management side, because that is a very process-oriented business, there's a lot of things that go into that. I have set up, I've run all the tasks. There's not something that someone in my office I've not done prior to them. So we've been able to work through what that looks like step by step. And that's also set up for, God forbid, something happened to them, or they want to take a vacation, or they get pregnant. You know, I've set it up not just for me and my family, but for them and their family as well. If they
Yeah.
need to take an extended amount of time off, I had a girl who just had a baby herself and she was going to take the regular amount of time. I said, absolutely, just let me know. She comes back, I want more time before I come back. Absolutely, we've got everything taken care of because we've got the systems in place. All we did was rerouted where some of her tasks were going, brought someone else in temporarily, but everything still flowed very smoothly. And it's because everything was meticulously crafted for family first in my world. Um, and one of the other things that I wanted to mention is, you talk about all these things and going through, everyone has things and stuff that they go through. And one thing that I realized through this week is you also have to give yourself some grace. I spent, as I told you, 12 hours every day the past week, plus dealing with the doctors and everything else. And it was taxing because my grandmother was twirling a baton a month ago. We were just with her a week ago, and
Mm.
now from where she was to what she is now is completely different. She's not my grandmother the way that I knew her. And so it was emotionally taxing, it was mentally taxing, and I was just exhausted. And Sunday, I kind of crashed and I just needed a day. And
Mm.
as business owners, as people, as humans, I feel like there's so many times that we are going because that's what we're expected to do. It's the same thing that I talk about with fitness and your mental health, and you've got to take care of you first. If I'm not taking care of myself, then I can't take care of my grandmother or my family. And so for a little bit on Sunday when I took that day, I actually didn't get off the sofa at all. People were messaging me. I just didn't respond to anyone. I was hoping they thought that I was okay, but I just needed a day. And
Right.
I felt bad for doing it, which I need to work through that part. But when I woke up on Monday, my mind was clear. I was refreshed and I was able to start because that was the first day we were truly meeting with hospice. And so all of the decisions that needed to be made, I was then able to make with a clear mind and confident moving forward what it looked like. So grace through struggle and also joy through struggle. You need to understand that this is a moment in time. Everyone's got these issues as well. You're not the only one. And so finding that support, finding that system that just surrounds you. And so we've talked about it before and what that network looks like and who you surround yourself with. If you are truly surrounding yourself with the people that matter, that care about you just as much as you care about them, while I might be the only one making these decisions, and in that sense, I feel alone, I know that there is an army of people around me that have my best interest at heart, that are always checking up on me, that are constantly making sure I'm okay. I've got a friend who's messaging me and saying, as soon as you've got free time, come stay with me. There's nothing you need to plan. Just pack your bags. You need a rest from all of this. And it's just so amazing when you've got those types of people in your life that truly care about you as a person and is about the struggles you're going through, that while it's not easy, you feel then like you can accomplish anything because you've got that strong team behind you.
Yeah. And and again, like I think I've just this year, if I start counting up the people that I know have had something,
Mm-hmm.
like as I said, Shelly's mom, she was dealing with the cancer and end of life care, and then her mom passing, and then, there's always stuff that happens after that.
Right.
And then, I had a good friend of mine recently, you know, I think he's mid 40s, and something didn't feel right. Went to the doctor, and literally within a week, he had his kidney removed because he had cancer.
Wow.
I know some people that they've got folks in their family or in their circle that has addiction issues. I know people that have health issues. I know people, again, have had people pass away, sickness. you name it. So, oh, and one of our good friends, their son he was riding his bicycle and had a really bad accident, and he had a lot of facial trauma from that. And and I always say that because people have stuff going on. You got to realize and remember you're not the only one. You are, and most people, when you think about it from a different perspective, what would you do if a really good friend had something traumatic or big happen in their life? What would you do? Would you say, hey, let me help you out? Can I set up a meal train? Can I take something on for you? Can I mow your grass? Can I whatever? So when it happens to you, there are people who are looking to do that for you, and I don't know if anybody's mowed your grass yet, but who knows? Maybe they will. Um, but the one of the things that I've done with some clients recently, and if you guys have never heard of this before, it's the Eisenhower matrix. It sounds kind of geeky, but if you take this thing, it's just a tool. It's really simplistic. It's a matrix, 4 blocks, but each side represents two different things. And on one side, it's talking about what is urgent and what's not urgent, and on the other side, it's what's important and what's not important. And when you think about your life, and we have to do this at all, like you could literally go through this exercise every month. And if you think back to like when everything was good, 3 weeks ago, when grandma's twirling a baton, like you're talking about, everything's fine. Then, at that point in time, you might take this matrix and say, okay, I'm going to prioritize things. And here are the things that are both urgent and important. I have to take care of them. I have to do these things. They're going on my to-do list, and I'm going to get them done today or within the next like 2 days. And
Mhm.
then you say, well, what are the things that are important but not necessarily urgent? Well, I'm going to put them on my calendar, or I'm going to put them on my task list, the automated one. And it's something that will remind you maybe on Thursday that you have to do this, or again, you block time in your calendar to do this. But if it's you'll pick other things on there, and you talked about a VA, okay?
Mhm.
And you might say, you know what? I'm going to take this list of things here, and I'm going to delegate this to my VA. You might say, you know what? I love mowing my grass, but there is just no time right now. And maybe you hire your son to mow your grass. Maybe you hire, a landscaper to mow your grass. But it's like, I got no time for this. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I struggled with not mowing my grass anymore. I struggled with, because I'm like, we're dinks. When do we not have time to mow our own grass? When do we not have time to clean our own house? But we've had somebody mowing our grass and cleaning our house for the longest time. And what you're doing is you're buying your time back. And
Right.
whether everything is fine, everything's in your life is perfect, or it's not perfect, and you have to make time and space for other things, you still have to go through that same exercise and figure out what it is that you can delegate, or whether you can maybe even push it off to a later time. But then the last thing, which is something I think a lot of people forget, is we have distractions. And in that matrix, when you think about things that are either not urgent, or I say both not urgent and not important, then you really start thinking about those things as just trash and distractions. So
Mhm.
even if you went in your phone and I know everybody needs their release, and you were talking before this that you did your devotional and you went and got your workout, that might be like your downtime. You can
Right.
call it downtime, or your what you did to create your uptime. I don't know, whatever it is that you like. But you know, there are things that we all do every day, every week, every month, that it's just trash. It's distractions. And it's funny how when the bad stuff happens, you don't even think about getting rid of that stuff in your life. You just don't have time for it. I'd be
Mhm.
willing to bet well, I don't know. I'd be willing to bet if you got into your phone and looked at how much you've used your apps, or your phone screen time in the last 2 weeks, I'll bet it's a lot less than what it had been.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Yeah,
because you haven't
absolutely.
had time.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you said that was important is like the things that are urgent, and there's so many people that I've talked to that they're either a one-man show or they don't have enough time to set up the processes then to allow someone to come in and take over. And so I would argue that those should be high priority. They should be, if you can't set up processes and systems, one, in case you're not there anymore, but two, so that someone can take over these tasks, then you're basically continuing that one-man show. So those should be high priority tasks. I'm a big believer in AI, right? But AI is only as good as the people behind it. So you need to set those things up and what that looks like. And the whole
Mhm.
reason you do things with AI is to better improve your systems and better improve marketing and all of those things, not to take away that human touch. But all of those things have to be set up and in place for your, things that happen throughout your life. And it just makes things, I'm not going to say it makes them easier, because when you're going through something, it's not easy, but it takes one less stress. Just like you said, the grass being cut, the house being cleaned. When I walk in the house or see the grass mowed and I didn't have to do it, it's one less thing that I have to expend my energy for. My energy is much better spent with tasks and delegation and taking care of my family. And that's the whole way I've been able to grow the companies that I've got, to still 100% be active in my children's life, to be there at the drop of a hat when someone needs me, is because I've spent so much time early on setting all of these things up. So I would say that those would still be those high value items that someone needs to, you might not be making that money on them today, but down
Mhm.
the road, it's going to be well worth the investment you've put into it when you did.
And I know, again, I know from working with clients that a lot of, like, some of what we're talking about right now, for some, it's going to look like more work.
Right.
Like
It is
just the
more work at the
conversation
beginning.
of,
Yeah.
well, it's the way I look at it is like you're skating to where the puck's going to be.
I
You
love
can kind
that.
of
Yeah.
like, you can skate to where it's been and try to chase it, or you can skate to where it's going to be.
Right.
And although and that's why it's important to think about it. And I will say, like, I've worked with both some people that have worked for me and some clients, and they struggle with this concept because they think it's more work. Well, the reality of it is, let's just say, even if you think of yourself or someone else as like it's an 8 hour a day employee, okay? If you really think about that, when you say there's more work, are you squeezing 10 hours into an 8 hour day? Because it's still only 8 hours,
Right.
right? You're not, there's no way you can take all this and compress it. 8 hours is 8 hours. It's just a fixed amount. So that's why I go back to that Eisenhower matrix,
Hmm.
because you can buy your time. I did one of these interview like this for another couple a couple years ago. It was a husband wife. He's a real estate agent in the Carolinas, and she owns her own business. And they were just talking about how they're so stressed out and how they have so much stuff going on, and they just can't get it all done. And I said, and I looked at them and I said, as I'm talking to them, I saw their 16-year-old son walk by in the back room.
Yeah.
And as he walked by, I said, "How old is he?" He said, 16. I'm curious, does he have his license? Oh, yeah, he loves to drive. He's always begging us to drive. Really? And I know where they live. And I said, well, it takes you about 30 minutes to get to the grocery store, right? Mm-hmm. How long does it take you to typically buy all your like once, door to door in the grocery store, go through, get everything you want, check out and leave? How long does it take you? Maybe an hour? Like if you're doing the full run, not just a
Quick one.
short list,
Right.
about an hour. So another half hour back home. So that's 2 hours. I'm curious, if you had your son go buy groceries, what would you do with those 2 hours? And it was getting them to think differently. It's like you got to change your patterns and prioritize things. And and again, that was like a delegation thing. You delegate to your son, get those things done. And to your point, when you are going to set up those systems, the processes, and those kinds of things, you're investing in yourself, you're investing in your future, and you got to carve time out. So that would go in that block
Right.
that is both urgent and important, that like, I got to get this done now. Otherwise, It is literally the definition of insanity. We just get on that rat wheel and we just keep going over and doing the
Going
same thing over and over. And that's why you
100%.
have to skate to where the puck's going to be.
We live in such a society where, I mean, these are great things. I use them. It's part of leveraging my time, but Amazon, you can get
Yeah,
on, find something that you love, right? We're one click shopping now. And in some instances, it's being delivered to me same day. And
yeah.
so our world is just surrounded with, we want something now, we're going to get it now, and that's how it's going to be. And you're building a business, you're building your future, you're building your legacy. These are not, these quick one-click shopping type scenarios. It does take the legwork. And I think that's the difference between the entrepreneur mindset versus someone who is just running in the race. Your mindset is, I know this is going to take time. If you look at someone's schedule who is an entrepreneur, it might be very busy, but it's intentional. It is set up so that way there are things in place for when stuff happens. And the one click right now, I kind of can run the business with a one click. I'm just answering quick questions, but that's because of the legwork that was put into it. So people see the success now, but they neglect to see, I mean, Amazon wasn't built in a night. It wasn't a one click system. It took time. Did it not start from just books at one point? So it's evolved. You evolve, your business evolves. There's so many things that go into place. It's your forward thinking. But if you don't have all the systems, processes in place, you don't have time to sit back and do that thinking and do the planning for the future. A lot of the times, my time is now spent on that forward thinking. So I'm still working. I'm still trying to create what that next step is going to look like, but it's just a different system for me in this stage.
And that really goes to like what are you doing with your time, right? So what you just talked about is the fact that you're keeping your interaction at a very high level. You're not getting into the minutia, and the minutia tends to take more time. So as you know, as you're doing that, and if any of you listening to this are thinking about your own day, your own week, and so on, what are you really focused on? Are you
Hmm.
focused on stuff and investing in time that on things that are going to help move the needle for you personally, or just stuff? And I feel
Right,
like too many people, and this might sound a little funny given your dad, but too many people are stuck in firefighter mode. You
right.
know, they're stuck in this thing of like they're running from this fire, they're running to this fire. And you know, your point about being intentional, too many people are like they even when, you know, again, like in your instance right now with what's going on, you know, you get super intentional because you have to start weeding stuff out. But when that turns off for a lot of people, they take their foot off the gas
Hmm.
and they tend to start again going back to, I'm just waiting for the next fire to pop up, as opposed to keeping their foot on the gas with the same intensity that they would have right now and keep their foot on the gas. And instead of waiting for the next fire, they start lighting the room.
Right. And I mean, it's life. Things are going to happen. I am not so naive to think that this is going to be the only issue that probably pops up this year. There will
Mm.
probably be other things that pop up. So just like to your point of keeping that foot on the gas, I would actually accelerate it during those high times and the good times, because when things do happen, you're now further ahead than where you were from the last fire. If you're not taking these situations that happen to you or with you or a part of your life and learning from them, growing from them, and using it as the next stepping stone to accelerate where you're at, then you're going to keep either staying stagnant or in some instances moving backwards. So you've got to keep looking. That's one of the things that I've been doing that actually I did on Sunday with some of my reflection and things like that is, looking at this whole picture and how I need to not be so sad about my grandmother. While I am sad, my grandfather was the love of her life. And I might cry. He was an amazing man. But she's going to get to go back and spend the rest of eternity with him in heaven. And so while me as a human here on earth might be sad about this, the big picture is She is about to be so joyful and overcome with joy for the rest of her life that I need to take a step back and realize this is no longer about us. This is about what her future is going to look like. And you have to be happy for that.
My one of my mentors, probably for like the about 20, I don't know that you ever lose a mentor, but one of my mentors passed away, and we went to their service in right there before Labor Day or Memorial Day. And it's only the third time in my life that I went to someone's, I'll just call it a service, where it's a celebration of life as opposed to a funeral.
Right.
And I say that because, it doesn't, your grandma is still with us, and your grandma lived a long life. And I say this just like with the service I went to here recently. It was a celebration of all the stuff that they've done. And you need to plan and look at that for yourself. You need to plan and look at that for everybody, right? And I'm talking about like your inner circle, your own family. I know when Shelly changed her real estate business, it was the same kind of thing. She was looking at what we're looking at right now can't sustain. This is not what it needs to look like long term. So we need to plan for the future, but you need to plan for a fantastic and full life. And I'm sure like with your grandmother, there's so many awesome things that people could sit around a campfire and just talk about.
Right.
And I know just in what little bit you've talked about here, I'm sure we could spend the rest of this year talking about your grandmother.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
so that being said, I know you've also gotten a big, and this kind of, I guess, coming full circle with this, we're talking about having a support system, and whether it's like the actual systems and the process and so forth that's put in place. So you are not required on the front line 100% of the time, and you can elevate to work on the business or to create new business, things like that. It's not just that, but it's also the people that you surround yourself with. And I know you've got something big that's coming up soon.
Yeah. So I started a group called Conquer, and it is for women in real estate or real estate investing who want to get into real estate. All are welcome. And what we do is it's a support system. We are faith, family, friends, fitness, and fortune. And to me, if you don't have all of those things, then just if you have the fortune, what good is that? You're going home and living, possibly in not a great relationship or, so looking at what that looks like full picture in the whole grand scheme of things and how to accomplish that balance. And one of the awesome things is we meet virtually every Monday to start off our week. And so we've got a group of women. I mean, most of us are still in pajamas, drinking I'm hot tea, but drinking coffee, hot tea, and just sitting there, spending a half an hour each Monday intentionally just getting ourselves ready for the week. And that is so awesome. And those women know me, I know them, and they're connected with me through this whole process. The next thing that we've got is the women's retreat that we're doing, the Empowerment Summit. And a lot of that is going to be based on rest, relaxation, and recharging. We're going to have some great food. We're going to do a bonfire. We've got a sunset boat cruise set up, some yoga, and then we're also doing just an empowerment conversation and presentation and what that looks like for you as a person and as a woman, and also how that affects you in real estate. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's coming up in July.
This is only to add to what Jenny's talking about. Shelly and I just had out in Montana, we just had a Yellowstone Experience Plus Mastermind out there. And we had about 16 realtors, I think it was about 16 realtors out there. It was realtors, and I'll say everyone was a realtor because some of them were realtors who brought their spouse. And if
Mhm.
you have a spouse, they're in real estate too. So,
Yeah.
but my point with this was we spent time on um, not everything was business,
Mhm.
and some of it was making connections, and some of it was learning other people. We did spend time masterminding out there, but to your point, it's not, you have to take care of yourself first. And we saw it firsthand. We saw it after the fact because of the messages that we got after they left.
Right.
We got a bunch of text messages coming back. In fact, we got a few even like a couple days later because I think they were brewing and reflecting on what happened.
Yeah.
And again, my point is you can't underestimate pouring into yourself, taking care of yourself, because when you take care of that engine, it has more energy and more power to take care of everything else on your plate.
Yes, absolutely. And that's so important. And there's so many, I mean, actually, when we talk about networking and things like that, when we go to these conferences and retreats and things like that, I get just as much, if not more, out of the networking and conversating with the people that are there as I also do with the speakers on stage. So
Mhm.
it's setting your mind to what that looks like and how, communicating and getting close to other people and how that can help your business, how that can help you personally, and what that looks like in the long run. And these are some of the women, and I've got a lot of other sphere that has reached out to me through this week, and it's like I said, while I might have to be alone in making some of these decisions, I now do not feel alone through my journey because of the amount of people surrounding me. And that is what Conquer, for at least this aspect, is looking to do with the other women. As soon as we know that there's something going on in someone's life, I just want to surround everybody and be a part and make sure that they are feeling connected and feeling like they've got their system in place as well.
That's awesome. Well, so all this, if this idea of Conquer sounds enticing and the kind of thing that you need to plug into, or if you're interested in the event that Jenny has going on, she'll be tagged in this as well. You can direct message her and ask more about it, learn more about it. And I think with that, we will wrap up this
Yeah.
podcast as well. And I know you and I run out of things to talk about, but we actually had a long list, and we took this
Yes,
idea and kind of prioritized this one above everything else, kind of because it's raw and it's what's going on right now.
absolutely.
And I know a lot of people are dealing with similar kinds of things, and I think you and I both just don't want people to take their foot off the gas for the rest of this year.
Right. And then also give themselves grace. You don't have to be perfect every day, but also don't let those struggles deter you from moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you again, Jenny. It's great
Yep. Thanks,
talking to
Kevin.
you and having this podcast with you today. And stay tuned because we'll have another one coming up very soon.